So, back on page 155 of your textbook, which is the introductory chapter to classical music. And I want to look at this here. It's the last feature to listen for in classical music. It says the important feature to listen to is the development and refinement of various forms of instrumental music. Okay, so we're talking about instrumental music, not vocal music. And it says such music is referred to as absolute music. Let me try and summarize what this means for you. Absolute music is music where the sounds are only about music things. You might go, well, what does that mean exactly? Well, absolute music would be where you're listening for the form, or for themes, or for keys, or for development, or for instrumentation. Music that is not about music would be like, and they mention here, Vivaldi's Four Seasons is, we saw that in the last unit, is concerto, where actually four concertos, one written about trying to evoke aspects of the seasons. In other words, non-music or extra musical things. Vivaldi went so far as to actually say this part represents a storm, or this part is representing birds chirping, or a brook, or something like that. And so they're fundamentally different ideas that music is about something, or depicting something, or evoking something non-musical. And that's called program music. Now, during the Baroque period, program music, although we saw an example of Vivaldi's works doing that, is really rare. Even in the classical period, it's pretty rare. In fact, the classical era is all about expansion and development of like forms of music that existed in the Baroque period. The binary form that's there expands into the minuet and trio. Even for symmetry, gets a exposition development that's like a fugue, right? Then gets a recapitulation for balance on the other side. Forms get bigger, and creation of these forms leads us to the creation of symphonies and concertos and other multi-movement chamber works. And we've been fixated and focused on hearing forms. That is the main point of most classical music. So we're getting at the end of this unit here, and we're going to start looking at Beethoven. Notice that Beethoven actually gets an entire chapter dedicated to just him, right? And if you look at the previous chapter, which is piano music, they hold up a little bit of Mozart's music, okay, about the piano sonata, but then, Beethoven gets 2 pages of biography here, and all about his piece dominates the rest, okay? Beethoven is a transforming figure in the classical period, and his music literally, and his personality transforms the way we think about music because of Beethoven. Although he's a genius and an expert at absolute music in terms of forms and development and those kind of things. And his music certainly has that in it. Music for him is more than that, and it becomes about things, about emotions, about people. He's a interesting personality, and I'm not saying that other composers up to this point, personality or life didn't get infused into their music, but Beethoven, more than anybody else, is a focal point in music history, where his life and his personality and his ego and his particular, well, everything that makes him Beethoven is infused into the music that he makes. And so um, we want to know more about him more than anybody else to understand why his music transforms us. After Beethoven, there's almost no music that's written that's not program music or about something. There are a few people that try and return to absolute music, saying music should be sufficient in itself. But Beethoven single-handedly transforms the aesthetics of music, and it's really hard to find music that's not about something, at least in reference or directly trying to make that be the case. How are we going to approach Beethoven? Well, Beethoven, therefore, is actually the first composer that we want to know about Beethoven so we can understand his music. Um, if Mozart woke up and he was having a crappy day, or his relationship with his father is not good, or his father has died, um, or his relationship with money or his wife, or all of this, he's not popular at court. All of these things, on a micro way, infuse themselves into his music, but on the whole, he still wakes up and writes this facade of beautiful classical Viennese music. Um, One of the tragic things about Mozart is sometimes you can hear in the tenderer or even happy things that he's putting on a front. But the point is, he has and society has an aesthetic of this is what good music is, and this is what it's like, and all the classical traditions and techniques and things. And so, if he's having a bad day or sad, he's still writing music the way it should be written to be good music, and certainly his own music, but still. Uh, you go back even further to Bach, and he never had writer's block because he's actually written letters to his children saying, I don't understand why people get this writer's block, thinking this is something difficult. I wake up and I write music, and there are techniques and things that he uses. Just like he says, an expert cabinet maker or woodworker or table maker doesn't wake up and go like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? There's technique, and he thought of himself as a craftsman more than an artist, or maybe the same thing together, but it wasn't personal, it was technique. Beethoven is the first real composer that we look at as a huge figure that if he's angry, his music is angry. If he's in love, his music is in love. If he's trying to one up people, then his music becomes incredibly virtuosic. If everything about his personality and his life experience infuses in and informs the music, and it comes out on the other side. And that's part of the reason why he was recognized as a genius at the time, but also rejected as well. And as such, also his personality um, sometimes made him a celebrity and sometimes made him infamous. It's really important to know his life, and you can't get that from in any real detail from looking at this. You'll get details that he had an alcoholic father, that he went deaf, that he flirted with the idea of being an aristocrat, but at the same time he hated that. And of course, he went deaf. Right? Those are things you'll get. But today, we're going to have you actually go and watch a movie. Think of it like movie day in class. So if you go to the today's schedule, there's a link to a documentary series, and it's just 45 minutes, sort of 1 hour type television show. But it goes into great detail, enough for this class, much better than you'll get from reading just this, um, about Beethoven and his upbringing, his youth, his progression as a composer, how his deafness, his struggles with intimacy and love life, and also everything. His health affects that all, and so that's where we're going to go. So from here, let's chart a path. You should scan through this. Really, you should. Okay, just read through it, and then go over to the schedule for the day and click on the YouTube link for the video on biography of Beethoven and his music. And then after that, there is a short quiz that will link to another more fun short video that will see if you can spot some Beethovenisms. Um, and remember, uh, Beethoven is a transitional figure. He grows up, schooled in the classical era, but he himself, his music, his personality changes from the classical era into the next unit called the Romantic era. Um, Musically and intellectually, emotionally, personally, he starts off in one school, but because of reasons, he takes us to the next. And he is the father of all romanticism in terms of music. There are no composers following him unless they're the odd ones that just didn't get any education, lived out somewhere. But sorry, there are no composers in the sort of train of the classical music tradition and people that came after that are not informed of Beethoven's music know it and influenced by it in some way, for good or bad. So have fun today. And then next week, we'll actually start to dig into the nuts and bolts of piano music, why Beethoven's is so great, and then how Beethoven messes with the sonata cycle. And we'll look at Symphony 5 of his as well. Then after that, we'll round things up and look towards unit test.